Welcome, dear viewers. For more exclusive, thrilling stories every week, join our membership. Sit back, relax, and sip your coffee. Enjoy. The first time I heard about my sister's disappearance, I was 8 years old, hunched over a bowl of Cheerios in our cramped Casper apartment. Mom was on the phone, her voice cracking as she spoke to the detective who'd been assigned to Ellie's case. It had been exactly 1 year since she vanished on Route 26 outside Shoshone. No, Detective Morris. She wouldn't just leave. She had classes at Casper College on Monday. Her textbooks were still in her car. Mom's fingers trembled around her coffee mug. The car was just sitting there, on the side of the road, no sign of a struggle. I remember how the milk turned warm as I listened, too afraid to eat. The way Mom's face crumpled when she hung up. The way she looked at me like she was seeing a ghost. "They're closing the case, Maggie," she whispered. "They say there's nothing more they can do." That was in 2003, 22 years later, and what happened to Eleanor June Whitaker remains one of Wyoming's coldest cases. I've spent most of my adult life trying to outrun my sister's shadow, moving between cities, taking whatever jobs would hire me. Seattle, Portland, Denver, anywhere but Wyoming. But when Mom died last March, the cancer finally winning its 3-year war, I found myself drawn back to the place I'd sworn I'd never return to. It wasn't grief that pulled me back. Well, not just grief. It was the journal they found in Mom's safety deposit box. Ellie's journal from the weeks before she disappeared. The last entry was dated the day before she vanished. I started working at that strange inn off Route 26 today. The locals call it the 666 because of the address, but the actual name is the Crossroads Inn. Red door, middle of nowhere. The owner, Meredith, seems nice enough, but the rules here are odd, specific. She made me write them all down, twice, then recite them back to her. Said following them exactly is a condition of employment. If anything happens to me, Maggie will find this. She's always been the careful one, the one who pays attention to details, the one who follows the rules. If anyone can figure this out, it's her. The journal was water damaged, many pages illegible, but Ellie's handwriting was unmistakable. The same looping script that had helped me with my 3rd grade homework. Mom had kept it hidden all these years. Maybe she thought she was protecting me, or maybe she couldn't bear to follow the lead herself. Either way, I found myself driving across Wyoming in Mom's ancient Toyota Corolla, the journal riding shotgun, my entire life packed in the trunk. The familiar landscape of my childhood rolled by, endless plains dotted with pronghorn, the distant silhouettes of the Wind River Range, skies so vast they could swallow you whole. I pulled into Shoshone on a Tuesday evening in early October. Main Street was practically deserted, the population sign at the town limits claiming 637 souls, though I suspected even that was generous. The local grocery, Simpson's Market, was closing up for the night. A handful of pickup trucks clustered around the Wind River Tavern, country music drifting faintly through the autumn air. I stopped for gas at the Maverick station, gathering my courage to ask the attendant about the Crossroads Inn. The man behind the counter was weathered, late 60s maybe, with eyes the pale blue of a winter sky. His name tag read, Frank. "Excuse me," I said, sliding my credit card across the counter. "I'm looking for an inn around here, maybe called the Crossroads. Possibly has a red door." Frank's hand froze mid-reach. His eyes flicked to my face, then away. "Don't know any place like that," he said flatly. "It would have been here at least 20 years ago," I pressed. "My sister worked there before she disappeared." Frank's face changed, something like recognition flickering in his eyes. "Whitaker?" he said. "You're Eleanor's sister." I nodded, surprised. "You knew her?" "Everyone knew about her case." He sighed heavily. "Listen, that place isn't called the Crossroads. Locals call it the 666. It's still there." "Can you tell me how to find it?" Frank hesitated, then scribbled on the back of a receipt. "Take 26 east about 4 miles. There's a dirt road on the left, no sign. Follow it about 2 miles to the end." He slid the paper across the counter, voice dropping. "If you're smart, and you look smart, you'll turn around once you see it. That place has rules, strange rules. People who don't follow them exactly, they don't come back." "Like my sister," I said quietly. He nodded once. "Whatever you do, if you go there, get a copy of the rules. Memorize them. Follow them to the letter. No exceptions, no matter how arbitrary they seem." "Thank you," I said, pocketing the directions. "One more thing," Frank called as I reached the door. "If you do go, and you do stay, count everything. Count the rules, count the staff, count the guests. If the numbers ever change, leave immediately. Don't pack, don't say goodbye. Just leave." I nodded, the gravity of his warning settling heavy on my shoulders. As I walked back to my car, I felt a certainty I hadn't known in years. I was going to find this place. I was going to discover what happened to Ellie. And unlike my sister, I was going to follow every single rule. Down to the letter, down to the second. Because details matter. Because rules exist for a reason. What I didn't know then was that the most important rule was the one they wouldn't tell me, until it was already too late. The dirt road stretched before me like a dusty ribbon unfurling into darkness. My headlights cut through the night, illuminating sagebrush and the occasional tumbleweed. No streetlights, no houses, no signs of civilization. Just emptiness spreading in all directions under a canopy of stars. Frank's directions proved accurate. 4 miles east on Route 26, unmarked dirt road on the left. The Toyota's suspension groaned in protest as I navigated the rutted path, my fingers tight around the steering wheel. 2 miles in, just as I was beginning to wonder if I'd taken a wrong turn, it appeared. The 666th. The inn materialized from the darkness like a mirage, a 2-story structure of weathered wood and stone, windows glowing with warm light. A neon sign flickered weakly, VACANCY, and there, just as Ellie had described, was the red door, blood red against the faded exterior, its paint fresh and gleaming. I parked beside the only other vehicle in the lot, a battered blue Jeep Cherokee. The night air hit me as I stepped out, crisp and dry, carrying the scent of sage and dust. In the distance, coyotes called to one another, their yips echoing across the empty landscape. I grabbed my duffel bag and Ellie's journal from the passenger seat. Drawing a deep breath, I approached the red door. It swung open before I could knock. A woman stood in the doorway, backlit by the warm interior. She was tall, with silver-streaked black hair pulled into a severe bun. Her face was angular, all sharp cheekbones and deep-set eyes, age impossible to determine. She could have been 50 or 70. "You must be Margaret," she said, voice smooth as river stones. I faltered. "How did you—" "Small towns," she replied with a thin smile. "News travels. I'm Meredith Blackwood, owner of the Crossroads Inn." Her eyes flickered to my bag. "We've been expecting you." Those words sent a chill through me, but I kept my expression neutral. "I'd like a room, please, and information about possible employment." Meredith stepped aside, gesturing me in. "We have 1 room available, and we are indeed looking for a waitress." The lobby was surprisingly cozy, Wooden floors covered with faded Persian rugs, a stone fireplace crackling with warmth, antique furniture arranged in conversational clusters. Old black and white photographs lined the walls, alongside framed newspaper clippings and maps of Wyoming. It reminded me of the historic hotel in Thermopolis, where Dad used to take us swimming when we were kids. The registration desk was an imposing oak affair, behind which hung a large wooden board with brass room keys. Only one key remained. Room 13. 13, I murmured. Meredith's eyes met mine. Is that a problem? Not at all, I replied smoothly. I wasn't superstitious. Numbers were just numbers. Good. She slid a leather-bound registry toward me. Please sign. As I reached for the pen, I noticed the previous signatures. The last entry was dated 6 months ago. Lucy Hainsworth Riverton. The Hainsworth girl Frank had mentioned. I signed my name beneath hers. Now, Meredith said, reaching beneath the desk. The most important part. She produced a sealed envelope. The rules. She placed it in my hand, her fingers ice cold against mine. Read them tonight. Memorize them. If you decide to stay and work here, you must agree to follow them without exception. I understand, I said, tucking the envelope into my jacket pocket. I'm good with rules. Something flickered across her face. Amusement? Doubt. It was gone too quickly to interpret. The dining room closes in 20 minutes, she said, handing me the brass key. You should eat something. Sarah will serve you. As if on cue, a young woman emerged from a doorway behind the desk. She was perhaps 20, with pale blonde hair and eyes so light blue they were almost colorless. Her lips curved into a smile that didn't reach those eyes. I'll show you to your room first, Sarah said, voice soft as falling snow. She led me up a creaking staircase to the second floor. The hallway stretched in both directions, lined with numbered doors. We passed rooms 1 through 12 before reaching 13, at the very end of the corridor. Dinner is served until 9 p.m., Sarah said as she unlocked my door. Breakfast from 6 to 8 a.m. The dining room is through the double doors off the lobby. She handed me the key. You should eat before reading the rules. They can be overwhelming on an empty stomach. The room was simple but clean. Double bed with an iron frame, dresser, nightstand, and an upholstered chair by the window. A door led to a small private bathroom. Thank you, I said. Sarah lingered in the doorway. You look like her, she said suddenly. My heart stumbled. Like who? The other Whitaker girl, Eleanor. The air left my lungs. You knew my sister? Sarah's expression shuddered. I have to get back to work. Don't be late for dinner. The kitchen is strict about closing time. She pulled the door shut, leaving me alone with the echo of her words. I sank onto the bed, clutching Ellie's journal. Sarah couldn't possibly have known Ellie. She wasn't old enough. Yet she spoke as if she'd seen her with her own eyes. I checked my watch. 8:43 p.m. 17 minutes until the kitchen closed. The envelope with the rules sat heavy in my pocket. Every instinct urged me to tear it open immediately, but Sarah's warning gave me pause. If I was going to approach this methodically, I needed a clear head and a full stomach. Decision made. I tucked the envelope and Ellie's journal under my pillow, washed my hands in the bathroom sink, and headed downstairs to eat. Whatever secrets this place held, whatever had happened to my sister, I would uncover it. Carefully, systematically, following every rule to the letter. If only I'd checked the journal one more time before going downstairs. If only I'd seen the warning Ellie had scribbled in the margin of the water-damaged page. First rule of the 666, never trust the written rules. The dining room of the 666 was eerily quiet. A massive oak table dominated the center of the room, surrounded by 12 empty chairs. Beyond it, tall windows revealed nothing but darkness, their reflections transforming them into black mirrors. The walls were adorned with more photographs, landscapes of the Wind River Range, downtown Shoshone from decades ago, and portraits of stern-faced men and women who I assumed were previous owners. I was the only diner. Sarah appeared silently at my elbow as I settled into a chair, placing a steaming bowl of beef stew before me, along with a thick slice of homemade bread and a glass of water. "We weren't expecting guests tonight," she explained. "This is what we have ready." The stew smelled amazing, rich with rosemary and thyme, the meat tender. My stomach growled in response. "This is perfect, thank you," I said, studying her face. In the soft lighting, she looked even younger than I'd first thought. "How long have you worked here, Sarah?" She stiffened slightly. "A while." "And you mentioned knowing my sister? Eleanor?" Sarah glanced toward the kitchen door. "I shouldn't have said that." "Please," I pressed. "I've been looking for answers for 22 years. After a moment's hesitation, she sat down across from me, keeping her voice low. "I didn't know her personally, but there's a photograph of her in Meredith's office. She worked here too." "Do you know what happened to her?" Sarah's pale eyes darted nervously to the kitchen again. "She broke a rule," she whispered, "but I don't know which one." The kitchen door swung open, and Sarah was on her feet instantly. A man emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, with a neatly trimmed salt and pepper beard. He wore a chef's apron over jeans and a flannel shirt. "Everything to your satisfaction, miss?" he asked, voice a deep rumble. "Yes, thank you." "It's delicious," I replied. "I'm Owen," he said, "cook in maintenance." His handshake was firm, his palm calloused. His eyes, though, they were the same unsettling pale blue as Sarah's, like winter ice over deep water. "Maggie Whitaker," I offered. Something flickered in his expression. "Whitaker?" he repeated. "Related to?" "My sister," I confirmed. "She worked here before she disappeared." Owen exchanged a glance with Sarah. An entire conversation seemed to pass between them in that look. "Eat your dinner, Miss Whitaker," he said finally. "Kitchen closes in 7 minutes." They retreated to the kitchen, leaving me alone with my stew and questions. I ate quickly, the food as delicious as it had smelled, my mind racing. The photograph of Ellie in Meredith's office, Sarah's comment about breaking a rule, Owen's reaction to my name. They knew something about what had happened to my sister, but I wouldn't get answers by pushing too hard, too fast. I needed to move carefully, systematically. I needed to read the rules. After finishing my meal, I returned to room 13. The envelope sat exactly where I'd left it, under my pillow beside Ellie's journal. I briefly considered reading more of the journal first, but decided against it. I wanted to approach the rules with fresh eyes, without being influenced by Ellie's experiences. I broke the wax seal on the envelope, an actual wax seal, dark red with the impression of a crossroads symbol, and withdrew several sheets of thick, cream-colored paper. The rules were handwritten in elegant calligraphy, the ink so dark it seemed to absorb light. Rules of the crossroads. Inn 1. Curfew is strictly enforced. All guests must be in their rooms between midnight and 6 a.m. Do not leave your room during these hours under any circumstances. 2. Lock your door before sleeping. Use both the key lock and the deadbolt. 3. If you hear knocking at your door between midnight and 6 a.m., do not answer. No matter who it sounds like, no matter what they say, do not open your door. 4. Do not look out of your windows after dark. Keep the curtains drawn from sunset to sunrise. 5. Staff quarters are located in the east wing. Guests are not permitted in this area at any time. 6. The cellar door in the kitchen is kept locked for your safety. Do not attempt to open it. 7. Meals are served at strict times. Breakfast 6 to 8 a.m. Lunch 12 to 1 p.m. Dinner 6 to 9 p.m. The kitchen is closed to guests outside these hours. 8. The land surrounding the inn is private property. Guests are welcome to walk the grounds during daylight hours but must remain within sight of the building. 9. Cell phones and electronic devices do not function reliably here due to our remote location. A landline is available at the front desk for emergencies. 10. Water is precious in the desert. Please limit showers to 5 minutes or less. 11. All guests must sign both in and out of the registry when leaving the property, even temporarily. 12. If you encounter any other individuals on the property who are not registered guests or known staff, do not engage with them. Report their presence to management immediately. Additional rules for staff. 13. Staff must arrive 15 minutes before their shift and remain 15 minutes after. 14. The kitchen is to be thoroughly cleaned after each meal service. No exceptions. 15. Staff are not to discuss the inn's history, previous employees, or specific incidents with guests. 16. All personal items must be stored in your assigned locker. Nothing is to be left in common areas. 17th. Staff are provided room and board on the east wing. You may not sleep elsewhere on the property. 18. If a guest reports hearing or seeing anything unusual, document it in the incident log. Do not investigate alone. 19. The supply closet on the second floor must remain locked at all times. Only Meredith has the key. 20. Weekly inventory must be conducted every Sunday before dawn. All items must be accounted for. 21. The red candles in the dining room are to be lit at sunset and extinguished at sunrise. This duty rotates among staff members. 22. Never enter room 13 alone. I read through the list twice, then a third time, committing each rule to memory. Most seemed reasonable, if oddly specific. Standard hotel policies mixed with quirks that could be explained by the inn's remote location. Except for the last one. Never enter room 13 alone. I glanced around the room, my room, unease crawling along my spine. Why assign me to the very room that staff were warned about? I returned to Ellie's journal, flipping to the pages where she'd mentioned the inn. Most were too water-damaged to decipher, but I found one partially legible entry. Rules seemed designed to keep us isolated. No phones, no leaving after dark, no wandering the grounds, and the staff rules are even stranger. Meredith watches us constantly, making sure we... The rest was illegible, the ink blurred beyond recognition. I turned to the next page. Something isn't right about room 13. Sarah says it's been empty for years, but sometimes at night I hear... Another illegible section. I carefully turned more pages, looking for anything about the rules, about room 13, but found nothing clear enough to read. Frustrated, I set the journal aside and returned to the list of rules. If I was going to solve this mystery, if I was going to find out what happened to Ellie, I needed to follow the rules perfectly while looking for inconsistencies or hidden meanings. First step, secure my room for the night. I checked my watch, 10:27 p.m. Still over an hour until curfew, but I was exhausted from the drive and needed to be sharp tomorrow. I made sure the curtains were fully drawn, checked that the bathroom window was locked and its small curtain closed. Then I double-checked my door, engaging both the key lock and deadbolt. Rule 2, check. As I prepared for bed, a soft sound caught my attention. Footsteps in the hallway, passing by my door, then stopping. They were too light to be Owen's. Sarah, perhaps, or Meredith. I froze, listening. The floorboards outside my door creaked slightly, as if someone was shifting their weight. Then, after several long seconds, the footsteps continued down the hall, fading into silence. A perfectly normal occurrence in any hotel. People walked the halls all the time. So why did it make my skin prickle with unease? I slid into bed, Ellie's journal tucked safely under my pillow, the rules folded and placed on the nightstand. Despite my exhaustion, sleep felt distant. My mind kept circling back to that final staff rule. Never enter room 13 alone. But I was already here. Alone. Just as I was about to drift off, my phone chirped with a text notification. Surprising, given Rule 9's warning about electronics not working. I reached for it on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. Count them again. Count what again? The rules? I sat up, grabbed the list, and counted. 22 rules total. 12 for guests, 10 for staff. But when I'd read them earlier, hadn't there been... I counted once more, carefully. 22 rules. Not 21. Rule 22. Never enter room 13 alone. Maybe I'd miscounted the first time. Or maybe I was just tired. My mind playing tricks. Either way, I decided the rule didn't apply to me. I wasn't staff. I was a guest, at least for now. Sleep came in fitful bursts, broken by the unfamiliar creaks and groans of the old building. Each time I woke, I checked my phone. 1:17 a.m., 2:43 a.m., 3:52 a.m. The mysterious text remained unanswered. I wasn't about to engage with an unknown number in the middle of the night. At 4:28 a.m., I jolted awake to the sound of footsteps in the hallway, heavier than before, measured and deliberate. They paused outside my door. I held my breath, heart pounding against my ribs as I recalled Rule 3. If you hear knocking at your door between midnight and 6 a.m., do not answer. No matter who it sounds like, no matter what they say, do not open your door. No knock came. Instead, something scraped softly against the wood, like fingernails or the tip of a key. The doorknob rattled once, testing the locks. I remained perfectly still, watching the narrow gap beneath the door for shadows. A minute passed. 2. Then the footsteps retreated, unhurried. I exhaled shakily, checking my phone again. 4:32 a.m. Still nearly an hour and a half until the safe period began at 6 a.m. I doubted I'd sleep again, but I remained in bed, following the rules to the letter. At precisely 5:59 a.m., I heard activity downstairs. Dishes clinking, voices murmuring. I waited until my phone showed 6 a.m. before rising and preparing for the day. In the bathroom, I kept my shower under 5 minutes, as Rule 10 dictated. As I dressed, I glanced at the window, tempted to peek outside to get my bearings in daylight. But Rule 4 was specific. Do not look out of your windows after dark. Keep the curtains drawn from sunset to sunrise. Technically, sunrise wasn't until 7:12 a.m. in October. I left the curtains closed. The dining room was empty when I arrived at 6:30 a.m., though the table was set for 3. The aroma of coffee and bacon filled the air, making my stomach growl. I took the same seat as the night before. Sarah emerged from the kitchen moments later, carrying a pot of coffee. "Sleep well?" she asked, filling my cup. "Well enough," I replied noncommittally. "Are there other guests?" "Just Mr. Thornfield." "He's been here 3 days now." She gestured toward the table settings. "Meredith always joins guests for breakfast." As if on cue, the dining room door opened. A man entered, early 40s with sandy hair graying at the temples and wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a tweed jacket with elbow patches over a button-down shirt, every inch the stereotypical professor. "Good morning," he said, his British accent unexpected. "You must be the new arrival. Charles Thornfield." He extended his hand. "Maggie Whitaker," I replied, shaking it. His grip faltered. "Whitaker? Any relation to Eleanor Whitaker?" My pulse quickened. "My sister. Did you know her?" "Not personally." Thornfield adjusted his glasses. "I'm researching disappearances along this stretch of Highway 26. Your sister's case is one of several I'm documenting." "You're a journalist?" "Academic. I teach folklore and regional mythology at the University of Sheffield." He lowered his voice as Sarah returned with plates of food. "We should talk privately. There's more to these disappearances than most realize." Before I could respond, Meredith swept into the room, dressed in a charcoal gray skirt and crisp white blouse. Her severe bun was impeccable, not a strand out of place. "Good morning," she said, taking her seat at the head of the table. "I trust you both slept well." "Like the dead," Thornfield replied with a thin smile. "Miss Whitaker? How was room 13? I met her gaze steadily. "Very comfortable, thank you." "Excellent. I understand you're interested in employment here. We could use the help, especially with Mr. Thornfield extending his stay." She sipped her coffee. "Sarah will be leaving us soon." Sarah, pouring juice at the sideboard, nearly spilled the pitcher. "Where are you going, Sarah?" I asked. "Denver," she replied, avoiding my contact, "to study nursing." Meredith's smile didn't reach her eyes. "We're very proud, though we'll miss her terribly. Finding reliable help out here is challenging." Breakfast continued with polite, meaningless conversation about the weather and the history of the region. Thornfield asked Meredith about local legends, which she deflected with practiced ease. I focused on memorizing details, the way Sarah's hands trembled slightly when Meredith spoke to her directly, the faint scar along Owen's forearm when he briefly entered to refill the coffee, the pattern of the silverware, which didn't quite match, as if pieces had been replaced over time from different sets. After the meal, Meredith invited me to her office to discuss the waitressing position. As we left, Thornfield caught my eye, mouthing later, when Meredith wasn't looking. Her office was small but meticulously organized. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with leather-bound volumes on Wyoming history and ledgers dating back decades. The opposite wall featured framed photographs, and there, just as Sarah had mentioned, was Ellie. My sister smiled from behind the same oak reception desk that stood in the lobby, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, her eyes bright. The photo was dated June 2003, just weeks before she vanished. "She was an excellent employee," Meredith said, following my gaze, "until she wasn't." "What happened to her?" I asked directly. Meredith sat behind her desk, gesturing for me to take the chair opposite. "I think you know the official story. Her car was found abandoned on Route 26. No signs of foul play. The investigation concluded she likely left voluntarily." "And the unofficial story?" Something cold flickered behind Meredith's eyes. "There is no unofficial story, Miss Whitaker. Your sister worked here for 3 weeks. One day she didn't show up for her shift. We never saw her again." She was lying. I could feel it in the calculated pause before she spoke, see it in the slight tension around her mouth. "Now, about the position," she continued smoothly. "The salary is modest, but includes room and board. You'd be taking over Sarah's duties, serving meals, light cleaning, preparing the dining room. Hours are 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., with breaks between meal services. Mondays off." "And the rules?" I prompted. Sarah mentioned they're quite important. Crucial, Meredith corrected. This inn has stood for over 100 years in one of the most unforgiving landscapes in America. The rules are what keep it running and keep everyone safe. I've read through them, I said carefully. Most seem straightforward enough, though I admit I'm curious about the one regarding room 13. Meredith's posture stiffened fractionally. Which rule would that be? Rule 22. Never enter room 13 alone. She stared at me for a long moment. There is no Rule 22, she said finally, her voice flat. There are 21 rules, 12 for guests, 9 for staff. I frowned. I counted 22 last night. I'm certain of it. May I see your copy? I withdrew the folded paper from my pocket and handed it to her. She scanned it, expression unchanged. 21 rules, she said, returning it to me. Count them yourself. I did. 12 guest rules, 9 staff rules, 21 total. No Rule 22 about room 13. My skin prickled with unease. I was certain I'd read it last night, had counted it multiple times after that strange text message. I must have miscounted, I conceded, though I knew I hadn't. An understandable mistake when tired, Meredith replied smoothly. So, the position. Are you interested? Despite every instinct screaming caution, I nodded. Yes. When would I start? Today. Sarah will train you during lunch service. You'll take dinner service tonight. She opened a drawer and withdrew a small silver key. This is for your staff locker in the east wing. Room 3. You'll move your belongings there after lunch. I accepted the key, its weight strangely reassuring in my palm. Thank you for the opportunity. Her smile was measured, calculated. We take care of our staff at the crossroads, Miss Whitaker, so long as they follow the rules. The implied threat hung in the air between us. After leaving Meredith's office, I sought out Mr. Thornfield. I found him in the small library adjacent to the lobby, examining a large framed map of Fremont County. Mr. Thornfield, I said quietly, closing the door behind me. You wanted to talk. Charles, please. He glanced toward the door. Did you bring the rules with you? I nodded, withdrawing the folded paper from my pocket. How many are there? He asked. The question sent a chill through me. 21? Why? Count them again. Right now. I unfolded the paper and counted slowly, pointing to each numbered item as I went. 21, I confirmed. But last night, there were 22. I'm sure of it. Charles's expression grew grave. The rules change, he said quietly. That's what I've been tracking. Not just disappearances, but shifting realities, histories that are rewritten overnight. That's impossible, I protested. Is it? How many staff have you met so far? I tallied mentally. 3, Meredith, Owen, and Sarah. And how many did you see last night at dinner? 2, Owen and Sarah. Yet at breakfast, you only saw Sarah until Owen briefly entered with coffee. I frowned. What are you suggesting? The staff count changes too, he murmured. Sometimes there are 3, sometimes 4, occasionally just 2. The details shift, but no one notices. Or if they do, they rationalize it away. He withdrew a small notebook from his jacket pocket. I've been documenting the changes since I arrived. The first night there were 18 rules. By morning, 20. Yesterday, 21. He tapped the paper in my hand. You saw 22 last night. Now we're back to 21. And the staff? 4 when I arrived. Meredith, Owen, Sarah, and a groundskeeper named Malcolm. Malcolm disappeared on my second day. No one mentioned him again. When I asked about him, Meredith said they'd never had a groundskeeper. A cold weight settled in my stomach. This is crazy. Indeed, but I've been researching similar phenomena for years. Places where reality seems flexible. He lowered his voice further. This inn sits at a crossroads, not just of highways, but of something else. The locals know it. That's why they call it the 666. What happened to my sister? I asked, my voice barely audible. Charles's expression softened. I don't know yet, but I intend to find out. He glanced at his watch. We shouldn't talk too long. It will draw attention. I took the job, I told him. I start today. Good. That gives you access to the East Wing. He hesitated. Be careful, Maggie. Follow every rule exactly as written, even if they seem arbitrary. Especially if they seem arbitrary. I will. As I turned to leave, he caught my arm. One more thing. Do you have the text? The one that told you to count the rules? I nodded, showing him my phone. Keep it, he said urgently. Don't delete it. It might be the only evidence we have that the rules are changing. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Who do you think sent it? Charles smiled grimly. If I had to guess, your sister. Lunch service began promptly at noon. I shadowed Sarah, memorizing the precise way she set the table, folded the napkins, and served the food. Only Charles was present for the meal, a simple affair of tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. Meredith didn't join us, and Owen remained in the kitchen. 2 guests, 2 staff at lunch, I whispered to Sarah as we cleared the table afterward. Is that normal? She glanced toward the kitchen door. Staff usually eat after guests. How many staff are there total? Her hand stilled momentarily. 3. Nardith, Owen, and me. She resumed stacking plates. 4 now, with you. Has it always been the same number? Sarah's pale eyes darted to mine, then away. Why are you asking? Just trying to learn the ropes. She leaned closer, voice barely audible. Don't count. Don't notice changes. It's safer that way. Before I could press further, Owen pushed through the kitchen door. Sarah, Meredith wants to see you. I'll finish training Maggie. Sarah nodded, wiping her hands on her apron. As she passed me, she pressed something into my palm, a small folded piece of paper. I slipped it into my pocket without looking at it. Owen was a taciturn instructor, demonstrating the proper way to clean the dining room and set up for dinner service with minimal explanation. His movements were efficient, almost mechanical, and I noticed he never turned his back to the windows, even though the curtains were open in daylight. So, I ventured, how long have you worked here? Long enough, he replied, arranging silverware with scientific precision. And you knew my sister? His hands paused for a fraction of a second. I knew of her. Sarah said Ellie broke a rule. Do you know which one? Owen straightened, fixing me with those pale blue eyes. Rules exist for a reason, Miss Whitaker. Your sister thought she knew better. He placed the last fork precisely parallel to the edge of the table. Don't make the same mistake. I'm very good with rules, I assured him. We'll see. He checked his watch. Time to move your things to the staff quarters. I'll show you to room 3. The east wing was accessed through a heavy oak door adjacent to the kitchen. Unlike the warm, inviting public areas of the inn, this corridor was utilitarian. Whitewashed walls, bare wooden floors, doors marked with brass numbers. Owen led me to room 3, which was about half the size of the guest room I'd occupied last night. Staff bathroom is at the end of the hall, he said, pointing. Shared, so be considerate. Staff lounge is the door on the right. There's a small kitchenette if you need anything between meals. The locker room is through there as well. He handed me a ring with 2 keys. Room key and locker key. Don't lose them. The room contained a narrow bed, a simple dresser, and a small desk. The window was covered with heavy drapes, currently tied back to reveal a view of scrubby desert stretching to the horizon. "I'll leave you to settle in," Owen said. "Dinner service begins at 6 p.m. sharp. Be in the kitchen at 5:30 to help prep." Once alone, I quickly unpacked, then sat on the bed and removed the note Sarah had slipped me. In delicate handwriting it read, "Your sister found something in the cellar. Room 13 is not what it seems. Be careful who you trust. I'll try to help if I can." I folded the note and tucked it into Ellie's journal, then hid the journal at the bottom of my duffel bag. Sarah clearly knew more than she was saying, but her fear was palpable. I needed to gain her trust gradually. Next, I examined the keys Owen had given me. The room key was a simple brass skeleton key, unremarkable. The locker key, however, had something scratched into its surface. Tiny numbers. 13-10-21. Curious, I made my way to the staff lounge and locker room. The lounge was sparse but comfortable. A worn sofa, 2 armchairs, a small television that looked at least 20 years old. A kitchenette occupied one corner, with a mini fridge, microwave, and electric kettle. The locker room was through a door at the back. 4 tall metal lockers stood against one wall, numbered 1 through 4. Mine was number 3. I inserted the key and opened it. Inside, I found a neatly folded waitress uniform, black slacks, and a white button-up shirt, along with an apron and name tag. But there was something else at the bottom, a small red candle and a book of matches. I recalled Rule 21. The red candles in the dining room are to be lit at sunset and extinguished at sunrise. This duty rotates among staff members. Tonight must be my turn. I placed the candle and matches in my apron pocket, then locked the locker and returned to my room to prepare for dinner service. At 5:30 p.m. sharp, I reported to the kitchen. Owen was busy at the stove, the aroma of roasting meat filling the air. Sarah stood at a cutting board, slicing vegetables with mechanical precision. "Good, you're on time," Owen said without looking up. "Sarah, show her how to prepare the dining room." As we laid out the tablecloth and settings, I kept my voice low. "What did you mean about room 13? Sarah's hands shook slightly. "The room changes," she whispered. "Sometimes it's bigger inside than it should be. Sometimes the window shows places that aren't there." "Is that what Ellie found out?" She shook her head. "Not just that. She went into the cellar. The one mentioned in Rule 6. The door that's supposed to stay locked." Sarah nodded. "Meredith keeps the key with her always. But your sister, she found another way in." "How?" "Through room 13. There's a..." She broke off as the dining room door opened. Meredith entered, immaculate as always in a charcoal gray dress. "Everything ready for dinner, Sarah?" "Yes, ma'am. Just showing Maggie the ropes." "Good. Mr. Thornfield will be dining alone tonight. I have business in town." Her gaze shifted to me. "Remember Rule 21, Maggie. The candle must be lit precisely at sunset. 6:42 p.m. today." I touched the candle in my apron pocket. "I have it ready." "Excellent." She smiled that cold, measured smile. "I've left emergency contact information at the front desk. I should return before midnight, but if not, you know the rules." After she left, Sarah visibly relaxed. "It's easier when she's not here," she admitted. "You seem afraid of her." Sarah's expression closed. "Not afraid. Cautious. Meredith sees things, knows things." She placed the final water glass on the table. "Don't break the rules when she's around. She always notices." Dinner service was straightforward. Charles Thornfield was a polite, undemanding guest, though he kept trying to catch my eye meaningfully. At precisely 6:42 p.m., I lit the red candle in the center of the dining table. The flame caught immediately, burning with unusual intensity, its light reflecting oddly in the darkening windows. After Charles finished his meal, he lingered over coffee. "May I help you with anything else, Professor?" I asked, refilling his cup. "Actually, yes." He glanced toward the kitchen, where Owen was occupied with cleanup. "I'd like to show you something in the library, if you have a moment." I followed him to the small room where we'd spoken earlier. He closed the door and withdrew a leather-bound journal from his jacket. "I've been researching the scene for years," he said quietly. "The pattern of disappearances goes back nearly a century. Every few years, someone vanishes, usually staff, occasionally guests." He opened the journal to a page of newspaper clippings. 1925, Samuel Wright, groundskeeper. 1933, Catherine Mills, cook. 1946, Thomas Ellison, handyman. He flipped forward. 1978, Diane Carter, waitress. 1987, Michael Pearson, guest. Another page. 2003, Eleanor Whitaker, waitress. What happened to them? Officially, most were ruled as people walking away from their lives, like your sister. Some were classified as potential foul play, though bodies were never found. He removed his glasses, polishing them nervously. Unofficially, I believe this inn exists at what folklore calls a thin place, where the boundary between worlds is permeable. You're talking about the supernatural. I'm talking about quantum reality, multiple dimensions existing simultaneously. He replaced his glasses. The rules change because reality itself is unstable here, and I believe the cellar is the epicenter. A chill crawled up my spine. Sarah mentioned Ellie found something in the cellar. "I need to see it," Charles said urgently. "But the door is always locked, and Meredith has the only key." "Maybe not the only way in," I murmured, thinking of Sarah's interrupted revelation about room 13. Charles gripped my arm. "Be careful, Maggie. 23 people have disappeared from this inn since 1925. I don't want you to be number 24. A knock at the library door made us both jump. Owen stood there, expression unreadable. "Dinner service is concluded," he said flatly. "Time to extinguish the candle and lock up Maggie." As I followed Owen back to the dining room, the full weight of what Charles had shared settled over me. 23 disappearances, shifting rules, reality itself unstable. And somewhere in this building was the answer to what happened to Ellie. I just had to be careful enough, methodical enough, to find it without disappearing myself. After clearing the dining room and extinguishing the red candle as required, I helped Owen and Sarah with kitchen cleanup. We worked in silence, the only sounds the clink of dishes and the hiss of the industrial dishwasher. Charles had retreated to his room shortly after our conversation, leaving the main floor eerily quiet. "What time does Meredith usually return when she goes to town?" I asked, trying to sound casual as I dried a stack of plates. "Depends," Owen replied, scrubbing a pot with mechanical efficiency. "Sometimes before curfew, sometimes not until morning." "And if she doesn't return tonight?" "Nothing changes," he said flatly. "Rules are still the rules." Sarah shot me a warning glance, and I dropped the subject. We finished cleanup by 10 p.m., leaving the kitchen spotless, as Rule 14 required. "Get some rest," Owen advised as we hung our aprons. "Breakfast service starts early." I retreated to my room in the east wing, but sleep was the last thing on my mind. I needed to find a way into the cellar, and according to Sarah, room 13 was somehow connected. But how could I investigate with Owen and Sarah still awake? The answer came in the form of a soft knock at my door at 11:05 p.m. I opened it to find Sarah, now dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt instead of her uniform. "Meredith called," she whispered. "She's staying in Riverton tonight. Won't be back until morning." "Where's Owen?" "His room. Once he's in for the night, he doesn't come out until 5 a.m. She glanced nervously down the corridor. "This is our chance. I can show you what I found, what your sister found." I grabbed Ellie's journal and my phone, then followed Sarah through the silent inn. The main areas were dark, illuminated only by small security lights that cast long shadows across the floor. We moved quietly, avoiding the spots where the floorboards creaked. "Room 13 connects to the cellar," I whispered as we climbed the stairs to the guest floor. Sarah nodded. "Not directly, it's complicated. You'll see." The guest wing was silent, Charles presumably asleep in his room. Sarah produced a master key and unlocked room 13, which had remained empty since I moved to the staff quarters. Inside, the room appeared exactly as I'd left it that morning. Same furniture, same drawn curtains. Sarah locked the door behind us and withdrew a flashlight from her pocket. "Your sister figured it out from the journal," she said quietly. "The one you have. She kept notes about the inconsistencies." "How do you know so much about Ellie?" Sarah's expression was unreadable in the flashlight's glow. "Because I've been working here a very long time. Longer than you'd think." She approached the old iron bed frame and knelt beside it, running her fingers along the floorboards. "Help me move this." Together, we shifted the heavy bed aside, revealing a section of floorboards that looked identical to the rest. Sarah tapped her foot along them, listening carefully, until she found what she was looking for, a hollow sound when she stomped on one particular board. "Here." She wedged her fingers into a nearly invisible crack and pulled. The floorboard came up, revealing a small cavity beneath. Inside was a brass key tied to a red ribbon. "This opens an old service corridor," Sarah explained, retrieving the key. "It was sealed off decades ago, but the passage is still there, behind the bathroom cabinet." We entered the small bathroom, and Sarah showed me how the cabinet under the sink could be pulled away from the wall if you knew exactly where to push. Behind it was a narrow door, painted to match the wallpaper, virtually invisible unless you were looking for it. The key fit perfectly into the ancient lock. With a grinding sound, the door swung inward, revealing a narrow, pitch-black passage. "Where does this lead?" I whispered. "Down," Sarah replied simply. "All the way down." She entered first, flashlight beam illuminating rough stone steps that spiraled downward. The air that wafted up was cold and stale, carrying an unpleasant, earthy odor. "Watch your step," Sarah warned, "and keep count." Keep count. Of the steps. It's important. I followed her into the darkness, pulling the door shut behind us. The passage was claustrophobically narrow, the walls rough-hewn stone slick with moisture. As we descended, I counted each step silently. 1, 2, 3. The spiral staircase seemed to go on forever, turning endlessly counterclockwise. The temperature dropped noticeably the further we descended. 21, 22, 23. "It doesn't make sense," I whispered at step 36. "We should be well below ground level by now." "I know," Sarah replied, her voice echoing slightly. "Just keep counting." At step 58, the staircase finally ended at another door, this one made of metal with no visible handle or lock. Sarah pressed her palm flat against it and pushed. With a groan of protesting hinges, it swung open. We emerged into what appeared to be the inn's cellar, though it was far larger than the building above could possibly accommodate. Stone walls stretched into shadow beyond the reach of our flashlight beam. The floor was packed earth, and the ceiling was supported by massive wooden beams darkened with age. "This can't be real," I breathed, taking in the impossibly vast space. "Reality is thin here," Sarah said, echoing Charles's words. "Especially in the cellar." She led me through the darkness, past rows of wine racks and shelves stocked with preserved foods. Everything seemed ordinary at first glance, just an old storage cellar. But as we ventured deeper, the space began to change subtly. The walls grew more irregular, the ceiling lower in some places, higher in others. The air became heavier, charged with something I couldn't identify. And then we reached a section where the neat rows of shelving gave way to something else entirely. A perfect circle of standing stones, each about 3 feet tall, arranged in the center of a cleared area. Within the circle, the packed earth was replaced by smooth stone slabs, etched with symbols I didn't recognize. And in the very center stood a pedestal holding a large leather-bound book. Sarah stopped at the edge of the circle. "This is it. This is what your sister found." I approached cautiously, memories of every horror movie I'd ever seen flashing through my mind. The book appeared ancient, its covers worn and cracked with age. A tarnished lock held it closed, but the keyhole was empty, the mechanism apparently broken. "What is it?" I asked, hesitating before touching it. "The inn's true registry," Sarah replied. "Every guest, every staff member, every rule, it's all recorded here, and it changes." "Changes how?" "Pages appear and disappear. Names are added and erased. The rules multiply or diminish." She stepped into the circle to stand beside me. "Your sister discovered that whoever controls this book controls the inn, and everyone in it." I reached out tentatively and touched the cover. The leather was warm beneath my fingers, unnaturally so, as if the book generated its own heat. "Can we open it?" Sarah nodded. "That's why we're here." I carefully lifted the cover. The first page contained a title written in elegant calligraphy. "The Crossroads Inn, Ledger of Souls." My heart beat faster as I turned to the next page. It contained a list of names, hundreds of them, written in different hands and inks. Many were crossed out. I scanned the list, stopping cold when I saw Eleanor Whitaker, halfway down a page. A line struck through it. "She's in here," I whispered. "Ellie." "Keep looking," Sarah urged. I continued turning pages until I reached a section headed Current Residents. There were just 5 names: Meredith Blackwood, proprietor Owen Hayes, cook, maintenance, Sarah. Waitress Charles Thornfield, guest Margaret Whitaker. Waitress Sarah's last name was completely blank, not redacted or crossed out, but as if it had never been written at all. "Why doesn't your name have a last name?" I asked. Sarah's expression was unreadable. "Because I don't have one anymore. It was taken from me." Before I could process that, a thunderous crash echoed through the cellar, followed by the sound of falling shelves. Sarah grabbed my arm, eyes wide with fear. "Someone's here. We need to go. Now." I quickly turned to the next section of the book, the rules. Unlike the carefully handwritten list I had been given, these rules filled page after page, written in different hands, some in languages I couldn't identify. Many were crossed out or had amendments scribbled in the margins. And there, near the end, was Rule 22. Never enter room 13 alone. Except now it was crossed out with a notation beside it. Redundant after removal of passage entrance. MB. "Maggie, we need to go," Sarah hissed, tugging my arm. Another crash, closer this time. A voice called out. Owen's voice, but distorted somehow, deeper and resonating oddly. "I know you're down here, Sarah. You know what happens to rule breakers." I snapped a quick photo of the page with my phone. then turned to the final pages of the book. They contained detailed accounts of each disappearance Charles had documented, but with one crucial difference. These weren't disappearances. They were sacrifices. My blood turned to ice as I read the entry for June 26th, 2003. Eleanor Whitaker, waitress, sacrificed for boundary maintenance, trespassed in the registry chamber, soul bound to the crossroads. "My sister is dead," I whispered. Sarah pulled me away from the book. "Not dead. Bound. There's a difference." A shadow fell across the far end of the cellar. Owen emerged from between the shelves. But he looked wrong. His movements jerky and unnatural, his eyes completely black in the flashlight's beam. "Run!" Sarah screamed, shoving me toward the periphery of the chamber. "Back to the stairs!" We fled through the maze of shelving, Owen in pursuit. His footsteps echoed oddly, sometimes seeming to come from multiple directions at once. Sarah led me through a different route than we'd come, turning sharply around corners, doubling back, until I was completely disoriented. "The numbers on your locker key," she gasped as we ran. 13-10-21. Remember them. What do they mean? Room 13, Rule 10, Rule 21. That's how you free her. We reached the metal door and burst through it, slamming it shut behind us. Sarah threw the bolt, but already something heavy was pounding on the other side. "Go!" she ordered, pushing me toward the spiral staircase. "Count the steps. Don't lose count." I began climbing, counting breathlessly as I went. 1, 2, 3. Behind me, the metal door groaned under tremendous pressure, the bolt beginning to bend. "Sarah, come on." "I can't," she called up. "I'm bound to the cellar. I can only leave when called to work. 17, 18, 19. The metal door gave way with a deafening crash. I heard Sarah scream, followed by Owen's distorted voice, speaking words in a language I didn't recognize. 27. 28. 29. Sarah's screams abruptly cut off. Tears streamed down my face as I continued climbing. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. 42, 43, 44. Something was climbing the stairs below me, its movements uneven, scraping against the stone walls. Not Owen. Not anymore. 53, 54, 55. I reached the top, fumbling with the door in panic. It swung open, and I tumbled through into the bathroom of room 13. Without pausing, I slammed the door shut and pushed the cabinet back against it. Through the wood, I heard it ascending, counting each step in a voice that was a grotesque mixture of Owen's and something inhuman. 56, 57, 58. It fell silent. I held my breath, pressing my weight against the cabinet. A single knock came from the other side, followed by Sarah's voice, perfect, untouched by fear or pain. "Maggie, let me in. I'm okay. Owen's gone." Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, not Sarah. Something else. "Please, Maggie, I'm hurt. I need help." I remembered Rule 3. If you hear knocking at your door between midnight and 6 a.m., do not answer. No matter who it sounds like, no matter what they say, do not open your door. Checking my phone, I saw it was 12:17 a.m. "I know you're in there," the voice said, still using Sarah's sweet tones. "Don't you want to save your sister? I can show you how." My hands trembled, but I kept them pressed firmly against the cabinet. "Go away," I whispered. The voice changed, becoming Ellie's, so perfectly Ellie that tears sprang to my eyes. "Maggie, it's me. Please let me in, baby sister. I've been trapped so long." I squeezed my eyes shut, heartbreaking. "You're not my sister." A pause. Then, in a voice that was neither Sarah's nor Ellie's, but something ancient and cold, "You'll join them soon enough. All of you do. In the end." Heavy footsteps retreated down the passageway. I remained braced against the cabinet until my arms ached, counting the minutes, following the rules that had kept me alive so far. Room 13, Rule 10, Rule 21. Whatever those meant, they were my only hope of finding the truth and possibly saving my sister. If she could be saved at all. I remained in room 13 until dawn, huddled against the bathroom cabinet, jumping at every creak and groan of the old building. Sleep was impossible. I kept replaying the night's events in my mind. The impossible cellar, the registry book, Sarah's revelation about being bound, and Owen's terrifying transformation. When my phone finally showed 6 a.m., I cautiously moved the bed back into position, concealing the loose floorboard, and slipped out into the hallway. The inn was quiet, golden morning light filtering through the windows. No sign of the previous night's horrors. I hurried to Charles's room and knocked urgently. He answered almost immediately, fully dressed, as if he'd been awake for hours. "Maggie, what's wrong?" He ushered me inside, closing the door behind me. "Everything," I said, my voice hoarse from exhaustion. "I found the cellar last night, with Sarah. But something happened. Owen found us and he wasn't human anymore. Sarah couldn't escape. She said she was bound to the cellar." Charles paled. "Show me." I pulled out my phone and showed him the photo I'd taken of the registry page. His hands trembled as he enlarged the image, studying the crossed-out Rule 22 and the notations. "My God," he whispered, "all my research and I never imagined. This is bigger than disappearances. The inn is collecting souls. Sarah gave me numbers before she..." I swallowed hard. 13-10-21. She said it was room 13, Rule 10, Rule 21, and that it was how to free my sister. Charles pulled out his notebook, flipping frantically through the pages. Rule 10 from yesterday's list was about limiting shower time. Rule 21 was about the red candles, but neither seems relevant to freeing someone. "The rules change," I reminded him. "We need to check today's list." "Wait." Charles held up a hand. "You said Sarah was bound to the cellar." I nodded. "She said she could only leave when called to work." "And she knew your sister." He stared at the wall, thinking hard. "Maggie, your sister disappeared 22 years ago. How old would you say Sarah is?" "Early 20s, I replied, then felt a chill as the implication hit me. "That's impossible. She would have been an infant when Ellie disappeared. Unless..." Charles's eyes widened. "What if Sarah didn't age? What if she's been here all along, bound as a servant, her soul trapped but her body still functioning?" I remembered Sarah's words. "I've been working here a very long time, longer than you'd think." And her entry in the registry with the blank last name. "Because I don't have one anymore. It was taken from me." "We need to find out who Sarah really is," I said, "and what happened to her." "First, we need to check the rules," Charles insisted. "If they've changed again, we need to know." We were interrupted by a knock on the door. Charles opened it to find Owen standing there, his expression flat, eyes normal. Not the solid black orbs I'd seen in the cellar. "Breakfast service begins in 10 minutes, he said mechanically. "Meredith has returned and is expecting both of you." His gaze flickered to me. "Kitchen duty, Maggie. Now." He turned and walked away, movements perfectly normal, as if last night had never happened. "He doesn't remember," I whispered once Owen was out of earshot. "Or he's pretending." "Be careful," Charles warned. "I'll try to distract Meredith during breakfast. You find the current rule list." I hurried to the kitchen, heart pounding. Would Sarah be there? Had she somehow escaped? Or would there be a new waitress, with everyone acting as if Sarah had never existed? To my shock, Sarah stood at the stove, cracking eggs into a sizzling pan. She looked up as I entered, her pale blue eyes showing no recognition, no hint of our shared ordeal in the cellar. "Good morning," she said pleasantly. "Could you set the table for breakfast? 3 settings?" I stared, unable to process what I was seeing. "Sarah? Are you okay?" She frowned slightly. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" Before I could respond, Meredith swept into the kitchen, immaculate as always in a gray skirt suit. "Ah, Maggie. Good morning. I trust everything went smoothly in my absence." "Yes," I managed. "No problems." "Excellent." She examined me closely. "You look tired. Didn't sleep well." "Just adjusting to a new place," I said, avoiding her penetrating gaze. "Understandable." She gestured to the dining room. "Please set the table. Mr. Thornfield will be down shortly." As I arranged plates and silverware, I noticed a new sheet of paper tacked to the small bulletin board by the dining room entrance, the rules. I quickly scanned the list, counting automatically. 20 rules today, not 21, not 22. Rule 10 now read, "Water consumption is monitored. All taps must be turned off completely after use. Report any leaks immediately." Rule 21 was gone entirely, replaced by a new Rule 20. In case of power failure, use only the emergency lanterns provided in the utility closet. No other light sources are permitted. My heart sank. The clue Sarah had given me, 13-10-21, no longer made sense with the changed rules. I needed to find her alone to see if she remembered anything. Breakfast proceeded with excruciating normality. Charles attempted to engage Meredith in conversation about local history, throwing me significant glances whenever her attention was diverted. Sarah served efficiently, showing no signs of recognition or distress. After the meal, as Sarah and I cleared the table, I whispered, "We need to talk about last night." Her brow furrowed in confusion. "Last night? I went to bed after cleanup. Did something happen?" "The cellar," I pressed. "The registry. You showed me." Sarah's face went blank, her movements freezing mid-motion. For a split second, her eyes flickered, not pale blue anymore, but solid black, like Owen's had been in the cellar. Then she blinked, and they were normal again. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said mechanically. "Excuse me. I need to help Owen with the dishes." She retreated to the kitchen, leaving me with dirty plates and a growing sense of dread. Whatever had happened in the cellar, Sarah had either forgotten it entirely or was being prevented from acknowledging it. I found Charles in the library again after breakfast. "The rules changed," I told him. "There are 20 now, and Rule 21 is gone completely." "What about Sarah? She acts like nothing happened." But for a moment, her eyes turned black, just like Owen's did in the cellar. I shuddered at the memory. I think whatever controls this place is controlling her too. Charles nodded grimly. "We need to find out who Sarah really is. If she's been here since before your sister disappeared, there might be records. Where would we look? Town records, newspapers, missing persons reports." He checked his watch. "There's a small historical society in Shoshone. I could go there this afternoon, claim I'm researching local history." "Won't Meredith be suspicious if you leave?" "I've been making day trips since I arrived. She's used to it." He lowered his voice. "The real question is whether it's safe for you to stay here alone." "I don't have a choice," I replied. "I need to find out what happened to Ellie, and maybe to Sarah too." Charles reluctantly agreed to my plan. After lunch service, he departed for Shoshone in his rental car, promising to return before sunset. I spent the afternoon completing my waitressing duties under Meredith's watchful eye, looking for any opportunity to speak with Sarah alone. My chance came during afternoon break, when I found Sarah in the staff lounge, writing in a small notebook. She quickly closed it when I entered. "Can I ask you something personal?" I ventured, sitting across from her. "I suppose." Her tone was cautious. "How long have you worked here, really?" Sarah's expression remained neutral, but I noticed her hands tighten around her notebook. 3 years, she replied without hesitation. "And before that?" "Where did you grow up?" "Casper. My mother was a nurse at Wyoming Medical Center." All plausible answers, delivered without uncertainty, yet something felt rehearsed about them. "Sarah," I said gently, "does the name Lucy Hainsworth mean anything to you?" Her reaction was subtle but unmistakable, a slight widening of the eyes, a catch in her breath. "No," she said too quickly. "Should it?" She was the last person to sign the guest registry before me. Frank at the gas station mentioned something happened to the Hainsworth girl last spring. Sarah stood abruptly. "I need to prep for dinner service." "Wait." I caught her arm. "Last night in the cellar, you told me you were bound here, that your last name was taken from you. Don't you remember?" For a moment, something flickered behind her eyes. Recognition, fear, desperation. Then it was gone, replaced by cold emptiness. "Let go of me," she said, her voice suddenly different, deeper, with the same resonant quality I'd heard from Owen in the cellar. I released her immediately, stepping back. "I'm sorry. Don't speak of things you don't understand," she said in that strange voice. Then she blinked and was Sarah again, looking confused. "I have work to do," she mumbled, hurrying from the room. I remained in the lounge, heart racing. She had remembered, just for a moment, before whatever controlled her reasserted itself. My phone buzzed with a text from Charles. Found something. Sarah Hainsworth, 19, reported missing from Riverton last April. Lucy was her mother. Coming back now. The pieces suddenly fell into place. The guest, Lucy Hainsworth, who had signed the registry 6 months ago, hadn't left. She'd been searching for her daughter. And somehow she'd discovered the truth, that Sarah was still here, bound to the inn like my sister. But Lucy's signature was the last in the registry before mine, which meant she, too, had disappeared or been sacrificed. And now, if the pattern held, Lucy's daughter was serving as a waitress, just as Ellie had, just as I was now. I had become part of the pattern. Dinner preparations called me back to the kitchen. As I chopped vegetables alongside the blank-faced Sarah, I wondered what would happen if I broke the rules deliberately. Would I disappear like the others? Or would I discover what Ellie had found? A way to expose the truth about the 666. The sun began to set, painting the kitchen in fiery orange light. Charles still hadn't returned. I checked my watch, 6:30 p.m. Dinner service would begin soon, and Meredith was already setting out her special red candles in the dining room. Red candles. Rule 21, now erased from the list. Room 13, Rule 10, Rule 21. Somehow, these were the key to freeing Ellie, and maybe Sarah too. I just had to figure out how they connected before I became the next name crossed out in the ledger of souls. Dinner service began with still no sign of Charles. Meredith seemed unconcerned by his absence, setting only 2 places at the table, one for herself and one for Owen. The routine felt orchestrated, as if they were merely going through the motions of running an inn that rarely had actual guests. "Will Mr. Thornfield be joining us for dinner?" I asked as I carried in a tureen of beef stew. He called to say he'd be delayed. Meredith replied smoothly. Car trouble in town. I doubted Charles had called at all. Cell service was practically non-existent this far from Shoshone, as Rule 9 had conveniently warned. More likely, Meredith simply knew he wouldn't be returning. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the dining room windows. Meredith gestured to the red candles on the table. Light them, please. I struck a match and touched it to each thick red candle. They ignited instantly, flames burning unnaturally bright and steady, with no flicker despite the draft that whispered through the old building. The wax, I noticed, didn't melt or drip, but remained perfectly solid. As the last ember of sunlight faded, the air in the room seemed to thicken. I felt a subtle pressure against my eardrums, as if the altitude had suddenly changed. Owen entered from the kitchen, movements stiff and deliberate, his face expressionless as he took his seat. Meredith's eyes reflected the candle's red glow. Tell me, Maggie, do you believe in boundaries? The question caught me off guard. What kind of boundaries? Between worlds, between what is and what might be. She sipped her water, watching me over the rim of the glass. Some places exist at the crossroads of realities. Thin places, the Celts called them. Places where the veil can be crossed, if one knows how. My skin prickled. She was describing exactly what Charles had theorized about the inn, yet her tone suggested intimate knowledge, not speculation. Is that what this inn is? I asked carefully. A thin place. Not just a thin place, Meredith corrected. The place, the crossroads, it has existed here since before humans had names for such things. She gestured around the room. This building is merely the current vessel, a way to contain and control the crossing point. Owen remained silent, mechanically spooning stew into his mouth, eyes fixed on his plate. And the rules? I prompted. They help contain it? Precisely. Meredith's smile was coldly approving. The rules create structure, maintain barriers. Without them, the boundaries would erode completely. She leaned forward. Your sister understood this eventually, after she broke the rules. My heart hammered in my chest. What happened to her? She became part of the structure, as all rule breakers do. Meredith placed her spoon down with deliberate precision. Like Sarah, like Owen, like all who came before. They're trapped here, I said, the horror of it settling over me. Their souls, at least. Not trapped, transformed. Meredith's expression remained serene. The inn requires caretakers, anchors to maintain the crossing. Human souls serve that purpose admirably. I struggled to keep my face neutral, to hide the revulsion and rage building inside me. And you? What's your role in all this? I am the keeper. She touched one of the red candles, running her finger through the flame without apparent pain. I ensure the boundary remains secure, the crossing controlled. I select suitable anchors when needed. Like my sister, I said coldly, like Sarah Hainsworth. If Meredith was surprised I knew Sarah's identity, she didn't show it. Sarah's mother came looking for her, just as you came looking for Eleanor. The inn draws in those connected to its anchors. It's efficient that way. You're a monster, I whispered. I'm a custodian, she corrected. Without me, without the anchors, the crossing would become unstable. Entities from the other side would pour through unchecked. She regarded me with something like pity. Do you think I enjoy binding souls to this place? It's necessary. A sacred duty. The door to the dining room swung open, and Sarah entered with dessert. Apple pie that smelled homemade and delicious, incongruously normal in the midst of this nightmare conversation. Your professor won't be returning, Meredith said as Sarah served the pie. He learned too much at the Historical Society, asked too many questions about the disappearances, about me. Ice formed in my veins. What did you do to him? Nothing yet. He's simply delayed. She checked her watch. In fact, I need to leave shortly to deal with the situation. Owen and Sarah will oversee things here. She turned to Sarah. Make sure Miss Whitaker follows all the rules tonight. She seems to have a troubling tendency toward curiosity, like her sister. Sarah nodded blankly, her eyes momentarily flickering black before returning to pale blue. Yes, Meredith. After dinner, Meredith departed in her car, taillights disappearing down the dirt road toward town. Owen retreated to his room without a word, leaving Sarah and me to clean up. We worked in tense silence, the implications of Meredith's revelations weighing heavily on my mind. I had to find Charles, had to stop whatever Meredith planned for him. But first, I needed to understand the connection between Room 13, Rule 10, and Rule 21. The key Sarah had given me before being reset by whatever force controlled the inn. As we finished wiping down the kitchen counters, I decided to take a risk. Sarah, I said quietly, I know who you are. Sarah Hamesworth from Riverton. Your mother came looking for you. She froze, sponge suspended over the sink. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible, strained, as if fighting against some invisible restraint. Help me. I'm trying, I whispered urgently. You told me how. Room 13, Rule 10, Rule 21. But Rule 21 is gone from the list now. What does it mean? Sarah's body convulsed, her face contorting with effort. Red candles, she managed, before gasping sharply and doubling over. Sarah. She straightened robotically, her eyes now completely black. I'm fine, she said, in that resonant, not quite human voice. You should retire to your room now. Curfew approaches. I backed away, realizing I wouldn't get more from her in this state. Good night, then. Instead of returning to my staff quarters, I slipped into the library, searching for any information about the red candles. Most of the books were local histories or ledgers, but on a high shelf, I found what I was looking for, a small, leather-bound volume titled Rituals of Crossing and Containment. I quickly photographed pages that mentioned candles, boundary maintenance, and soul binding. According to the text, the red candles weren't ordinary candles at all. They were made from a mixture of beeswax and human blood, forming physical anchor points for the souls bound to the inn. Each candle corresponded to a specific anchor, and when lit, reinforced their binding. The book also mentioned water as a conduit between worlds at crossing points. Rule 10's focus on water suddenly made more sense. Controlling water meant controlling potential weaknesses in the boundary. And Room 13? According to the book, crossings typically formed around numerological focal points. 13, the number of transgression and bad luck in Western culture, often served as a doorway between worlds. I checked my watch. 11:42 p.m. Curfew would begin in 18 minutes. I needed to act tonight while Meredith was gone dealing with Charles. But how could I free the anchored souls using these three elements? The answer came to me in a flash of intuition. The candles maintained the binding when lit. Water served as a conduit between worlds. Room 13 was a doorway. I had to extinguish the red candles with water from Room 13. Moving quickly, I made my way to the second floor and entered Room 13, which had remained unoccupied since I moved to the staff quarters. In the bathroom, I filled the ice bucket with water from the tap, remembering Rule 10's emphasis on all taps being fully turned off. I left the tap running, the first rule broken. The dining room was dark, except for the eerie glow of the red candles, still burning supernaturally bright hours after being lit. I approached cautiously, ice bucket in hand, listening for any sound of Owen or Sarah. Just as I reached for the first candle, a voice spoke from the shadows. She wondered if you would figure it out. Owen stepped into the candlelight, his eyes completely black, body moving with that strange, jerky quality I had seen in the cellar. But his voice was different now. Multiple voices layered together, some deep, others high and keening. "Your sister tried this too," the voices continued from Owen's mouth. "She failed. The keeper caught her before she could break the binding." "You're not Owen," I said, clutching the ice bucket tighter. "Who are you?" "We are the anchors," the voices replied. "All of us, bound together. Owen, Sarah, Eleanor, Lucy, dozens more, stretching back, decades." Owen's head tilted at an unnatural angle. "We maintain the boundary. We serve the keeper." "Against your will," I pointed out. "Will becomes irrelevant after binding." Owen's body shuddered, features contorting as if different entities fought for control. Suddenly, his posture changed, and a single voice emerged, deeper, older than Owen's. "Help us. Please. The candles. Quickly." Before I could move, Owen's body convulsed again, and the multiplicity of voices returned. "No! The boundary must hold." I seized my chance while the anchored souls fought among themselves. Lunging forward, I poured water from room 13 onto the first red candle. The effect was instantaneous and terrifying. The flame extinguished with a shriek that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The air rippled visibly, like heat waves over hot asphalt. Owen's body collapsed to the floor, racked with spasms. I moved to the second candle, dousing it quickly. Another inhuman shriek, louder this time. The walls of the inn began to vibrate, pictures rattling, glasses humming. A wind rose from nowhere, swirling through the dining room. As I approached the third and final candle, the door burst open. Sarah stood there, eyes black, face contorted in rage. "Stop!" The voice from her mouth was Meredith's, though the keeper was miles away. "You have no idea what you're unleashing." "I'm freeing them," I said, raising the ice bucket. Sarah's body lunged at me with inhuman speed. I dodged, barely avoiding her grasp, and flung the remaining water at the final candle. The moment the water touched the flame, the world seemed to split apart. A deafening crack echoed through the inn, as if reality itself had fractured. The floor bucked beneath my feet, sending me sprawling. Sarah screamed, her own voice now human and terrified. The darkness in her eyes leaked out like smoke, coalescing into a shadowy form beside her. All around the room, similar shadows emerged from the walls, the floor, the furniture. Dozens of them, human-shaped but insubstantial, their features indistinct except for their eyes, which glowed with recognition, gratitude, sorrow. One detached from the others, drifting toward me. As it drew closer, its features became more defined, more familiar. Ellie. My sister's spectral form reached out, her mouth moving without sound. I stretched my hand toward hers, tears streaming down my face. "I found you," I whispered. Our fingers almost touched, when suddenly headlights swept across the windows. A car had pulled up outside. Meredith had returned. The shadows recoiled, swirling in agitation. Ellie's form began to fade. "No!" I cried. "Don't go!" Sarah grabbed my arm, fully herself now, eyes normal. "We have to go. Now the boundary is weakened, but not broken. She'll bind us again if she catches us. But Ellie will find her own way out. We've given her the chance." Sarah pulled me toward the kitchen. The cellar. It's our only escape now. As Meredith's key turned in the front door lock, we fled through the kitchen toward the cellar door. No longer locked, but hanging open, revealing stone steps descending into darkness. Behind us, Meredith's voice rose in fury as she discovered the extinguished candles and the weakened boundary. The inn itself seemed to respond to her rage, walls groaning, floors undulating. The crossing was becoming unstable, and we were heading straight into the heart of it. The Fremont County Sheriff's Department officially closed the investigation into the destruction of the Crossroads Inn last November. The official report cites a gas leak explosion as the cause. The locals whisper other theories. No bodies were recovered from the rubble, despite the inn's guest registry indicating at least 4 occupants at the time of the incident. Owner Meredith Blackwood, maintenance man Owen Hayes, waitress Sarah Hainsworth, and British academic Charles Thornfield. I'm the only one who knows the truth, and I've kept it to myself. Who would believe that an inn at the crossroads of reality collapsed when its soul-binding ritual was broken? Who would accept that the 23 people who disappeared there over a century weren't dead, but imprisoned as supernatural anchors? The nightmares come less frequently now. I no longer wake up gasping, feeling phantom flames on my skin as Sarah and I fled through the collapsing cellar, the very walls melting around us as the boundary between worlds dissolved. Sometimes I still hear Meredith's inhuman shrieks as the crossing she'd guarded for decades destabilized, the anchors she'd bound breaking free all at once. Sarah lives with me now, in a small apartment in Laramie. She's slowly rebuilding her life, reconnecting with what remains of her family, attending therapy for trauma-induced amnesia. Her official story is that she was held captive at the inn, suffering abuse that blocked her memories. Close enough to the truth, I suppose. Charles survived too, rescued from the abandoned mine shaft where Meredith had left him to die. He's back in England now, writing a book about folk architectural anomalies in the American West. We email occasionally, sharing carefully worded updates that dance around what really happened. Some truths are too dangerous to commit to writing. As for Ellie, I still feel her sometimes. Not a ghost exactly, but a presence, one that's finally at peace. The investigators found bone fragments in the ruins that DNA testing confirmed belonged to several missing persons, my sister included. We held a proper funeral last month, 22 years overdue. Mom would have appreciated the closure. I keep the 3 items on my nightstand: the brass key from room 13, a fragment of red candle wax, and the photograph I took of the Ledger of Souls. Physical proof for those nights when I wonder if I imagined it all. Last week, Sarah and I drove back to the site. Nothing remains of the 666 but a blackened foundation and scattered debris. The dirt road is already becoming overgrown, nature reclaiming what never should have existed. We stood at the edge of the property, watching the sunset paint the Wind River Range in fiery orange. "Do you think it's really over?" Sarah asked. I considered the question carefully. The inn is gone. The boundary collapsed. The anchors are free. But the crossing itself... She hugged herself against the autumn chill. Crossroads don't disappear just because the markers are gone. She was right, of course. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt it. That same subtle pressure change I'd experienced when the red candles were lit, the air thickening almost imperceptibly. "We should go," I said, taking her arm gently. "It's almost dark." As we drove away, I checked the rearview mirror one last time. For just a moment, I thought I saw figures standing amidst the ruins, dozens of them, watching our departure. But when I blinked, they were gone, leaving only empty darkness. Some rules, I've learned, exist for a reason, and some boundaries should remain unbroken. But if you ever find yourself on Route 26, near Shoshone, and spot a dirt road leading nowhere. Drive on. The crossing may have lost its inn, but crossroads have a way of rebuilding themselves, and not all who wander there return.